Hi, in this video I'm going to take a look at the phase of a piano track being out of whack and why that was a problem, and two possible ways to solve this when it occurs to you. So let's go! So recently I sent a track out to my mastering engineer, and this was actually the mix of the track that you can see in the new production series. So I have a whole series of videos on how I produced and mixed that track. But when I got back the master and listened to it, I noticed that during very quiet parts of the song, where you almost only hear the piano, the correlation meter in span was going all the way negative. And then I went back to the mix to see whether it was actually in the mix already, and it was caused by the raw piano track. So without any of the effects, the raw piano track already caused the correlation meter to go into negative. Let's have a look at that. So on top you can see the piano track. This was recorded with a Roland EP880, and it's a very relaxed and sensitive piano part. And let me show you the correlation meter from Span, which is a free plugin by the way. Although a correlation meter is also part of the new Cubase Supervision plugins, so you could also see the correlation in the Cubase plugin, but I'm just using Span here because it's a bit bigger. So here, bottom right, you see the correlation meter, and let's play the piano part. Now this is an unmixed track, so there's no effects on it. So the negative correlation is not due to any mix effects that I have on there. And I also asked our keyboard player while he recorded this part to turn off all effects, because I want to add them during the mix. So it's also not likely to be caused by the effects that he has turned on his keyboard. Now the correlation meter displays the phase relationship of the stereo signal. And typically values lower than 0 means that there is out of phase material present. So if you look at waveforms, the left channel may be going up, and at the same time the right channel may be going down. And although when you listen in stereo that's not such a problem because you can hear left and right separately, but when this is summed to a mono signal, the out of phase signals can cancel each other out. And that means, for example, for this piano part, that the notes will become quieter or certain frequencies in the notes will become more quiet. And that's usually undesirable. Now, do we still care about mono summing? Maybe not. Most people are nowadays listening to tracks in stereo, but sometimes you still have phones or boom boxes or something that just have a single speaker, or a laptop speaker, for example. Or even in a big club, they might want you to hear the music the same everywhere, so they might not actually be sending it out to the PA in stereo, but it could be in mono as well. So in general, it's usually a good idea to still pay attention to the mono summing of your mix. Now I must admit that I was quite surprised that the raw samples in this piano were causing this problem, but then I did some research and apparently it's not that uncommon. I will provide a link in the description to an article in which somebody had a closer look at 2 piano VSTIs in which he found certain notes to have these phase issues that I'm showing you here as well. So it happens. Now I must say, for this particular track I listened to it on mono and the mono summing was not that problematic. So I'm going to leave it for now. But still, you and I may run into the situation where this is more of a problem. So I wanted to look at how to solve this when you get delivered a recording which has these kind of phase issues. Just learning, right? So let's have a look at the first solution that I found. Now for the first solution I duplicated the track, so this is exactly the same piano track. But I put a plugin on there which is called Vitamin by Waves. And Vitamin is actually a multi-band sonic enhancer, which can be used to enhance certain frequency bands. For example, if you want to enhance the bass region only, or maybe enhance only the high end, it allows you to do this. But I'm not actually going to use the enhancement part of this plugin, but on the bottom row here you can also see that it has these knobs which control the stereo image for each band. And what I did is I reduced the stereo image for the low mid band, whose crossover frequencies run from 90 to, well, I set it to 472, but by default it was on 500. But I tried to look for the problem area in the piano part and found that if I made this whole band mono, it significantly reduced the phase problem. So in this way I targeted the problem notes and reduced them to mono so that there would not be any phase issues anymore after that. So let's now have a listen to the same part of the track. And I want to see span again. And now have a look at the correlation meter. So yeah, there are still some very short dips into the negative, but mostly the correlation meter shows positive values now. So the phase issues have definitely been reduced. The question is, of course, what kind of impact does this have on the sound? Because previously my full track was nice and stereo in all frequency bands, and now I've reduced one band to completely mono. So let's have a listen to the differences, starting with the original one. Yeah, so it definitely impacts the sound. It sounds more mono than the original track. At the end, I'll also do a more visual comparison, by the way, so stick around. But let's first have a look at the second solution that I found. Because I also have a second copy of this track, and that track contains a Pro-Q3 instance. And as you can see, I have a low cut in there, below 600 Hz, but it's applied only to the side channel. So this band is in the mid-side mode. So I effectively get rid of the stereo part of the piano track below 600 Hz, where I found the problems are. So let's have a look at span with this EQ applied, see how it affects the correlation measurement of this track. So again, quite effective. It still dips into the negative very occasionally, but in general it stays positive on the correlation meter. So now let's have a listen to how this sounds compared to the original. Yeah, so again, it does impact the sound, but let's now compare the three of them to see which one we like best. Now the same trick that I showed you here with Pro-Q3 can actually also be done with frequency 2 in Cubase 11 Pro now. So you don't have to have the Fabfilter plugin to do this. So which method to get rid of the phase issues did you like best? Or is this actually a problem that you would never address or tackle at all? I'm curious, so tell me in the comments if you'd like. I also did a more visual comparison, which, well, if you've seen videos on this channel before, you know that I use the Fabfilter Pro-Q3 EQ match for a lot of things, like these comparisons. And I even have a separate video about it, which you can see over here. But I EQ matched the frequency spectrum of the Vitamin track to the original, and I did the same for the Pro-Q3 track and compared it to the original with EQ match. And these were the results. So the white line is basically the EQ curve that Pro-Q3 suggests to match the original track. And you can see that for the Vitamin track, you would still have to correct something in the EQ to get a similar sound in the frequency spectrum. But for the Pro-Q3 track, which basically had the low-cut filter on the sides, there's much more to correct. And it goes all the way down, of course, because we cut out a significant amount of low end on the sides. And for the Vitamin track, we only affected the low mid band. Now I must say that this also matches with what I like best when listening to these two tracks. I think the Vitamin track sounded a bit closer and truer to the original, although both solutions had quite significant impact on the width of the sound, of course, because you basically reduce the stereo image of part of the signal. Now, as always, I think it's a good idea to not let your mix decisions be guided by just these visual clues from the correlation meter. You have to listen whether the cure is not worse than the actual problem that the phase issues are causing. And for me, for this track, I decided not to use any of these solutions, but it was a nice learning experience anyway. And I will definitely pay more attention to the correlation meter before I send anything to mastering next time. And if you have found a better way to deal with problems like this, please tell me in the comments as well, so I can learn from it. Now, if you like this video or find it useful, please share it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell icon so you know when I post another video. And the video on your top right here shows the piano related video in my new production series, in which I talk about how we actually recorded this track. So have a look at that, enjoy, and see you soon.